You've been lied to about how this game works. And I'm not talking about a little white lie. I'm talking about a complete inversion of reality that was handed to you by every teacher, mentor, and motivational poster you've ever encountered. Be yourself. Work hard. Let your talent do the talking. Sound familiar? That advice came from people who either never made it to the top or made it so long ago they've forgotten what the climb actually requires. Because here's the brutal truth that society is too polite to tell you. The world is divided into two categories, players and pieces, and the difference between them has almost nothing to do with talent, intelligence, or even how hard you're willing to work. The difference is leverage, it's strategy, it's understanding rules that were never written down in any textbook because the people who benefit from those rules have zero incentive to share them with you. Today, we're going to break that silence. I'm going to walk you through 13 laws of what I call ruthless connection. Not ruthless as in cruel, ruthless as in unflinching, honest, strategic. These are the principles that let ordinary people build extraordinary relationships with those who hold power, influence, and access. Now, a warning before we go further. This isn't feel-good content. You won't hear me tell you to just be authentic or that the right people will find you. That advice is comfortable. It's also the reason most people spend their entire lives on the outside looking in. What you will hear is how human psychology actually operates, what powerful people actually respond to, and the specific moves that separate those who get ignored from those who get invited into the room. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why the strategies you were taught in school actively sabotage you. You'll have a framework that works whether you're trying to land a mentor, build a business relationship, or simply stop being invisible to the people who could change your life. So if you're ready to stop being a piece on someone else's board and start becoming a player, let's get into it. Law 1. Never outshine the master. Here's a mistake I see constantly. Someone gets in front of a powerful person, maybe a potential mentor, investor, or executive, and their instinct is to impress, show how smart they are, demonstrate their expertise, prove they belong in the room. And the moment they do that, they're done. They just don't know it yet. Why? Because powerful people are often more fragile than they appear. Not weak, fragile. Their position depends on being the smartest, the most capable, the one with the answers. When you walk in radiating brilliance, you're not signaling value. You're triggering their survival instinct. You become a threat instead of an asset, and threats don't get invited back. The strategy is counterintuitive, but devastatingly effective. Dim your light. Not forever. Not in every situation. But in the presence of someone whose ego is tied to their status, your job is to make them feel like the genius. Frame your ideas so they sound like extensions of their ideas. Let them take credit for insights you sparked. I know that feels unfair, but here's the thing. You're not trying to be right. You're trying to be in the room. The room is where the real opportunities are. Now, this leads to an obvious question. If you're not there to impress them with your brilliance, what exactly are you supposed to talk about? Law 2. Conceal your intentions. The worst thing you can be in any strategic relationship is predictable, because a predictable person is a controllable person. If they know exactly why you're there, exactly what you want, exactly how you'll respond, you have no leverage. You're a vending machine. Insert attention, receive pitch. The strategy here is to become what I call a cipher. Unreadable. When you meet a powerful person, do not talk business immediately. Talk about art, philosophy, an obscure hobby, something that has nothing to do with what you want from them. This does two things. First, it separates you from the parade of people who obviously want something. Second, it creates mystery, and mystery creates attraction. Think about it from their perspective. Everyone who approaches them wants something. That's exhausting. But when someone shows up who seems genuinely interesting, who isn't grasping for anything, who exists in their world for reasons that aren't immediately clear, that person becomes a puzzle. And powerful people love puzzles. They'll begin to chase you just to figure you out. So you've dimmed your light, you've become unpredictable, but eventually you do need something from them. How do you ask without destroying everything you've built? Law 3, appeal to self-interest, never to mercy. This might be the most important law in this entire video, so listen carefully. When you need something from a powerful person, never, and I mean never, appeal to their pity. No sob stories, no explanations of how hard things have been, no requests based on what you deserve. Here's why. For people who are constantly asked for favors, mercy becomes exhausting. Every time someone appeals to their pity, they're essentially asking the powerful person to carry an emotional burden. Do this, not because it benefits you, but because I need it and you're a good person. That's not a partnership. That's a guilt trip, and guilt trips create resentment, not relationships. The strategy is to reframe everything as a transaction disguised as an alliance. Identify their pain. What's frustrating them? What problem do they wish would disappear? Then position yourself as the solution, not because you need the opportunity, but because you genuinely can make their life easier. The universal language of powerful people isn't flattery, it isn't loyalty, it's self-interest. When you can speak that language fluently, doors open. Law 4. The art of strategic absence. There's a psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect. It was discovered in 1927 when a psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik noticed something strange about waiters. They could remember complex orders with perfect accuracy while the meal was ongoing. But the moment the check was paid, they forgot everything. The conclusion? Our brains hold on to incomplete tasks. We're wired to seek closure, and when we don't get it, the unfinished loop keeps playing in our minds. This is the science behind strategic absence. When you're fully present with a powerful person, engaged, valuable, memorable, and then you disappear, you create an open loop in their mind. You become unfinished business, and unfinished business is magnetic. The strategy is simple in theory, difficult in practice. Be fully present when you're there. Give them your complete attention, add genuine value, then vanish. Don't answer texts instantly. Have a life and a mission that doesn't revolve around them. Make your return feel like a reward rather than an obligation. Being over-available signals low value. It says, I have nothing else going on, you're my priority. And paradoxically, that makes you less interesting. Scarcity creates value, in economics and in relationships. Law 5, the mirror of Narcissus. Now we go deeper into psychology. Here's a fundamental truth about human beings that most people underestimate. Everyone is obsessed with their own worldview. We think we want to be challenged. We think we value people who push back. But neurologically, we're wired to trust people who reflect us back to ourselves. This is where neurological synchronization comes in. When you meet a powerful person, pay attention to their tempo. Are they fast and aggressive or slow and deliberate? Match it. Pay attention to their vocabulary. Do they use sports metaphors, military language? Start speaking their dialect. Pay attention to their body language. Mirror their posture, their gestures, their energy. This isn't manipulation, this is communication. When you mirror someone, you're bypassing their logical brain and speaking directly to what psychologists call the reptilian brain. You're sending a subconscious signal that says, this person is like me, this person is safe, I can trust this person. And trust is the foundation of every valuable relationship. Law 6. Become the gatekeeper of information. In the modern world, secret information is the currency of power, not public information. Anyone can Google that. I'm talking about the unfiltered truth. The thing their employees are afraid to tell them, the market shift their competitors haven't noticed. The insight that everyone in their circle is too intimidated to share. When you become a source of that kind of information, you become invaluable. You're what I call an intellectual spy. You see things others miss, or at least you see things others won't say out loud. Powerful people are surrounded by yes men. Their view of reality becomes distorted because everyone is telling them what they want to hear. If you can be the person who tells them the truth, tactfully but honestly, you fill a gap no one else is filling. One critical warning here: never reveal your sources. Keep the supply chain of information invisible. If they know how you know things, they can go around you. If you remain the only access point to certain insights, they stay dependent on you. That's leverage. Law 7. The law of the useful enemy. Nothing bonds two people faster than a shared enemy. This is tribal psychology at its most basic. Us versus them, in the trenches together. It's why veterans feel a connection with complete strangers who served in the same unit. Shared struggle creates a bond that years of polite conversation never could. So identify what they hate. Not a person, necessarily. Maybe it's inefficiency, bureaucracy, a philosophy they despise, a type of person who represents everything they've fought against. Then position yourself as an ally in that battle. When you can say, "I've dealt with that same frustration," or "I know exactly what you mean, and here's what I've learned about fighting it," you create an us versus them dynamic. Suddenly, you're not a stranger. You're a comrade. And comrades get access that supplicants never do. Law 8. Play to their fantasy. Here's something most people never realize. Powerful people don't live in reality. They live in carefully constructed narratives about who they are. Maybe they see themselves as the visionary rebel, or the wise mentor, or the self-made savior who rose from nothing. These fantasies might be partially true, but they're also inflated, protected, central to their identity. Your job is to identify their fantasy and play the supporting role. If they see themselves as a teacher, become the eager student. If they see themselves as the underdog who proved everyone wrong, emphasize the obstacles they overcame. If they see themselves as brutally honest in a world of sycophants, bring them unfiltered perspectives and credit them for being able to handle it. Here's why this works. When you become part of their fantasy, you become essential to their self-image. If you disappear, a piece of their identity goes with you. That's powerful. They'll protect you not because they care about you, but because losing you means losing a piece of how they see themselves. We're 3 laws in, and you already understand more about power dynamics than most people learn in a lifetime. But here's a question that changes everything. How available should you be to these people? The answer might surprise you. Law 9, Mastery of Emotional Alchemy. The world of power is chaos dressed in suits, decisions with million-dollar consequences, competitors trying to undermine them. 100 problems demanding attention every single day. The cortisol levels in these environments are astronomical. Your opportunity is to be the opposite, be the calm. When everyone around them is panicking, bringing problems, adding to the noise, you show up with solutions and composure. The most seductive words a leader can hear are these: "It is handled," not "we have a problem," not "what should we do," just calm competence. The problem is already solved. When you can consistently lower their stress, when interacting with you actually makes them feel better, you become addictive, not because of your skills, because of how you make them feel. And that's something they'll pay any price to keep. Law 10. Assume formlessness. The rigid break, the flexible survive. This law is about removing all friction from your interactions with powerful people. If they're formal, you wear a suit. If they drink whiskey at 8 p.m., you drink whiskey at 8 p.m. If they curse like sailors, you don't flinch. If they value punctuality, you're early. This isn't about being fake. It's about being adaptable, having a core identity that's strong enough to flex at the edges without losing itself. Most people have one mode, one persona, one way of showing up. That works fine with people exactly like them. It becomes a barrier with everyone else. When you can match anyone's culture without losing your own center, doors open. They assimilate you into their world because you don't create friction, you just fit. Law 11. Create dependence. Let me ask you a tough question. If you disappeared tomorrow, could your role be filled by a LinkedIn job posting within a week? If the answer is yes, you're vulnerable. You might be liked. You might even be valued, but you're not safe. The strategy is to make yourself difficult to replace. Master a task they hate but need done. Hold the keys to a system only you fully understand. Cultivate relationships with their key contacts that would be awkward for them to recreate. The goal isn't to become a hostage taker. It's to become so woven into their operation that losing you would create genuine pain. Make them wonder, even unconsciously, what would I do if he left? When that question has no easy answer, you have real security. You're now someone they need. But needing isn't the same as trusting. The final cluster explains how you shape not just the relationship, but the outcomes. Law 12, control the options. Here's the final and most sophisticated law. The most powerful person in any interaction isn't the one giving orders. It's the one who wrote the menu. Think about a restaurant. You feel like you're making a free choice when you order. But someone designed that menu. They decided what options exist, how they're priced, how they're described. You're choosing, but only within a framework someone else created. Apply this to any negotiation or decision. Don't ask open-ended questions. Present 2 or 3 curated paths where the one you want is the most logical option. Design the framework so that any reasonable choice leads to an outcome you find acceptable. This is the illusion of control. They authorize, you architect. They feel like they're in charge. You're the one shaping reality. Master this skill, and you're no longer just connected to power. You're wielding it. Law 13. Radical autonomy. This is the most paradoxical law of all, and it's the foundation everything else rests on. To truly connect with power, you must not need it. You must have your own kingdom, your own mission, your own source of identity and worth that exists entirely independent of them. Here's why this matters. Powerful people have highly calibrated radars for neediness. They can sense desperation from a mile away, and desperation repels them instantly, not because they're cruel, but because neediness creates obligations. It suggests you're going to take more than you give. But when you walk in with genuine autonomy, when you're willing to walk away from any deal because your sense of self doesn't depend on it, something shifts. Power recognizes power. Your lack of desperation becomes magnetic because it signals that you're operating on the same level. You're not trying to extract from them. You're evaluating whether they're worth your time. This isn't arrogance, it's groundedness, and it's impossible to fake, which means before you try to connect with powerful people, you need to build something of your own. A business, a skill set, a reputation, a mission, something that makes you whole regardless of whether they ever respond to your email. Okay, you've mastered presence and absence, you've built autonomy. But when you are in the room, what specifically makes you indispensable? That's the next piece of the puzzle. Let's step back for a moment. I just gave you 13 laws that most people will never learn. Not because they're secret, but because nobody wants to say them out loud. They sound too calculating, too strategic, too uncomfortable. But here's how I see it. These laws aren't evil. They're an honest observation of how human psychology actually works. You can pretend these dynamics don't exist and stay confused about why you're overlooked, or you can see the game clearly and decide how you want to play. Notice I said decide, because understanding power doesn't obligate you to use it ruthlessly. It gives you options. Options you didn't have when you were blind. If this changed how you see things, here's what I want you to do. Pick one law, just one, and apply it within the next 48 hours. Test it. See what happens. Strategy is meaningless without action.